So back in 2017, a Christian preacher was arrested outside a London cathedral because he was holding a placard saying, "Love Muslims, ban Islam, the religion of terror."
He's now lost a legal claim that he was unlawfully detained by police. He was never charged, but was arrested on suspicion of a religiously aggravated public order offence. So is this an attack on free speech?
Michael Phillips is a lawyer at Christian Concern. Michael Phillips, morning to you. Strikes me, it is exactly that. It was an attack on free speech. What's wrong with holding a placard like that? It wasn't inciting violence. He's entitled to his view.
Absolutely, he was entitled to his views, and as a result, a police officer came along. They had quite a cerebral conversation, backwards and forwards. "Please, could you leave?" "No, I won't leave. I'm exercising my right to free speech. If you don't leave, I'm going to take your placard off you." "No, I'm not going to allow that. I'm going to rip it off in front of you," the police officer said. And in the end, he said, "Listen, if you want me to leave, you're going to have to arrest me." And he said, "Okay, that's fine." The police officer arrested him. He took him into custody. He stayed there for 13 hours. And eventually, he was released on bail. And he was then placed on bail with restrictions not to go back there. And eventually, the Crown Prosecution Service, in this case, saw sense, and they decided not to prosecute this matter. But Ian is an evangelist. He works with Muslims. He loves Muslims. But at the same time, he just wanted to speak out about what had happened. Because if you remember, 20 days earlier, there was the attack, the London Bridge attack, where people had died. And we know that in the late 20th century, there's been approximately 3,395 people who've been killed in Islamicist-related attacks in that period of time. And he wanted to say something. And this was just a starting point in order to approach people and for people to approach him and speak to him as to why he was doing what he was doing.
On what basis was he arrested in the first place?
It was on the basis that he had broken Section 5 of the Public Order Act. So Section 5 of the Public Order Act says that you're not allowed to use threatening or abusive words or behaviour likely to cause harassment, alarm or distress. If you remember, the word insulting was removed a number of years ago, but it seems to have made, unfortunately, little difference to the police because they said, Ian said, "Look, I'm exercising my right to free speech." And they said, "Listen, human rights law doesn't matter. You've broken Section 5. You've got to get rid of that placard," despite the fact that there was one person who said that they were a little bit distressed. There was no protest. There was nobody shouting. It was just stood there with this placard, with another one which also said that love Muslims, hate Islam, Jesus is love and hope. So he wanted to reach Muslims with the message of Jesus, and he wanted just to say, "Look, I don't agree with your ideology, I don't agree with what has happened, but I want to have a conversation with you." It was a starting point.
Why on earth was he in custody for 13 hours? What were they talking to him about?
Well, they weren't talking to him about anything. They arrested him, they put him in a cell, and as a result, he was then, he had to wait for the duty solicitor to come along, which took quite some time for the duty solicitor to come. And that's what they were doing. He was just waiting there to be interviewed.
So he brought this claim that he'd been unlawfully detained on that occasion, and now the court has ruled that he wasn't unlawfully detained, but that therefore means this kind of thing can happen again and again.
It's a real worry for him. It's a real worry for other evangelists because police officers don't have a thorough education in the law and in human rights law and in even the Public Order Act. As far as they're concerned, when somebody is offended, then that's enough for Section 5 to be committed. And I've had this conversation with countless officers over the years and even people from the Crown Prosecution Service and magistrates and say, look, just because somebody's offended, just because somebody's distressed, doesn't mean it's a crime. You have to threaten somebody. You have to abuse somebody. You can't really abuse a religion. You can abuse an individual, but you can't abuse a religion.
So, Michael, if I go to the West End on a Saturday night where there are pro-Palestine protests every single Saturday night disrupting the City of London, and I go to a police officer and I say I'm offended by that anti-Semitic poster there, will they arrest that person on my behalf?
Well,
absolutely not.
Yeah, by parity of reasoning, absolutely. That's what they should be doing. Because that's what seems to happen to pro-life protesters, to Christian evangelists such as Ian Sleeper, and sometimes members of the Jewish community. That's what happens in those circumstances.
Okay, Michael.
That's the problem.
Thank you. Fascinating. Michael Phillips there from Christian Concern.
You absolutely know they wouldn't arrest anyone.
They would not.
Two-tier policing.